I'm doing great, Taylor. Thank you very much for coming to my show.
Sure, no problem. Glad to be here.
So I've gone through your profile. I can see you're doing outstanding work. So I thought to tell about you and the work that you're doing to my audience.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I've been in working in technology, mainly in sales, business development roles for about 16, going on 17 years now. And yeah, it's been an exciting journey. Lots of different experiences. Mainly worked on kind of the vendor side, but also worked on the system integrator side. So yeah, it's been a really great journey.
So 17 years of experience.
Yeah, 17 years of experience, mainly in cloud technologies. I mean, we're going back, a ways here. But it's really, I started out in the kind of the virtualization boom, when VMware and Citrix and Microsoft were all coming out with Hyper-V, with ESXi. Yeah, and that's kind of where it all began for me. Building private clouds, you're going into that whole infrastructure as a service, era that you had, able to get companies were able to get their hands on, infrastructure a whole lot more easily than they would have been buying it themselves and going through the pain of installing it, managing it all on their own sites. They're actually able to use someone else's server in someone else's data center. So yeah, that's kind of where it all started. And then, we've just gone, leaps and bounds over the years, now with, obviously, AI kind of taking over the scene now. It's all very exciting. Kind of this new era that we're going into.
So how do you define this evolution, technology evolution?
Well, I think you could see it in multiple ways. It's iterative. It's evolved as you're saying. And the same kind of principles I think apply in many ways back in the days of virtualization to now. Where now we're dealing with cloud native, and now we're dealing with containerization of applications, and everything is just getting faster, more lightweight, easier to deploy. And now AI is augmenting a lot of the core services that people are building now. But I think the evolution, has been sequential in terms of it really has built on each other. I think we wouldn't have the technologies and the capabilities today if we didn't have or went through the pain or went through the journey of kind of the foundational aspects of building IT, right? And I think that everyone is kind of standing on the shoulders of the generation, before them, and the teams that have gone before them, the innovators, the forward thinkers, people that have, taken traditional concepts and principles of IT and just built on them and innovated on top of them. And some of the big, large companies out there that have gone out and built, the next generation of infrastructure architectures out there. So we've gone from, kind of traditional monolithic architectures now to this kind of microservices, breaking everything down into smaller components type architectures now so that it's more, you can build it faster, you can repair it faster, it can evolve and respond faster, to companies' needs and requirements. And we're coming into this time where everybody's looking for speed and efficiency, and the way, dealing with big, large, monolithic infrastructures and applications, it was always going to come to a point where people are like, well, this is just not working, guys. We need to start to build infrastructures differently. We need to start building applications differently.
So when you joined in IT in 17 years back, you know how things were. Today, you are seeing what is happening. So if you compare these 2 days, this day with that first day, so what comes in your mind?
If I compare, it's a bit like, comparing a 57 Chevy, a kind of a very well built, car from the 50s and 60s, it worked, right? It worked. It was heavy. It was clunky. It was hard to repair sometimes, but it worked. It did the job. In terms of it got us to first base, right? But then now what we're seeing is that everybody's expecting, the Ferrari, everybody's expecting that highly accelerated, process of iteration, and improvement. And I mean, we just see it in the world of software development, right? Everyone is just looking for efficiencies and how to develop software more efficiently, how to increase the speed of their cycles, how to, upskill their developers more quickly, right? How to, reduce complexity. Because I think what people found back in the early days, in the 90s and the early 2000s, is that, there's this very small subset of folks that really understood how things worked and could actually build things. Now we're very much coming into an era where it's a democratization of capabilities and abilities. And the complexities of cloud and of infrastructure and of software, they're getting broken down, right? They're getting simplified. And we're seeing a lot of companies coming to the space looking to simplify the complex, right? Looking to make it available to various different user bases that are not super technical, which is really cool.
And from now, next 17 years, how it is going to be?
Oh God, I wish I had a crystal ball. I mean, we're going to be continue. The industry is going to continue to build, and to evolve, and to continue really this journey that we've started. I just think we're in for a very interesting ride here with how AI is going to be able to play a role, in the continuation of accelerating our journey into faster, more efficient, easier to access, easier to consume, easier to build, easier to troubleshoot, right? And easier to build these next generation of systems. So I'm really keen to look, at how AI is going to play a role in that.
So how is the journey building things to leadership role?
When in terms of in a leadership role, well, I think you've got a couple things, right? In the IT industry, it's a very busy space, right? It is incredibly noisy sometimes. Everyone is building something, shouting about something. We're the best at this, we're the best at that, right? And I think thought leadership is really, important, right? And building your brand as a company, your brand as an individual, and kind of what you stand for. And it's not just about what you do; it's really about the why that you do it, the reason behind what you do that people really buy into. And I think the most successful brands and companies out there have nailed this point, right? They really have articulated well, the why behind what they do, not just kind of what they do. I think, there's quite a few good examples, good and bad examples of that out there. But leading in today's world is very much about thinking about what is next, but then articulating to people, why it is what you do and why it is that you believe what you do is going to have an impact, in the world today.
And have you thought that in coming days the cloud technology is going to be global and solve human problems everywhere on the planet?
Absolutely. I'm very much in the startup ecosystem, and every day I come across, a new startup, that is, passionate about solving a problem in healthcare, in agriculture, food tech, um, you know, in green technologies. And it's honestly a very exciting time to be alive. And especially in the startup ecosystem, there are passionate people that are working really day and night, on technologies and things that I think are the next generation of folks that will solve some real world problems that we all want to see solved, right? And I'm just really glad to be part of it.
And what problems you want the youngsters to be solved?
Well, I think we'd all like to see more sustainability, in terms of our impact on the planet, as a human race, right? So all impacts. So whether that's cloud computing, impact on the environment. So I was involved with projects around immersed cooling projects around super high performance computing, right? Using immersion technologies to help cool large data centers and large server farms, using liquid as opposed to electricity, which is a part, which uses, cool air to primarily cool the data centers and cool the infrastructure, whereas now technologies are coming out where liquid can be used to cool large data centers. Sustainable agriculture like farming, and IoT technologies that are coming out. People are building, vertical farms, using technology, whereas, plants in our food that we consume is going to be starting to be grown, not just in large farm fields that we all know and very familiar with, but we're seeing now vertical farms, right? Where they're being, putting these large structures up, and then we're seeing technology take a kind of leading role in kind of things like hydroponics, right? And growing foods in kind of these, water type containers. And then IoT being used and the sensor data being able to use to monitor the climate and control the environment and accelerate the whole growing process. So things like that, I think innovations like that are going to really help us again drive efficiency in things like agriculture. So these are some of the exciting areas. And I just, we've seen a big uptick in terms of the cost of living, right? So energy, people innovating in energy right now, looking at, smart technologies to help people cut down and utilize their energy much more efficiently. So even and this is commercial and residential, right? So looking at technologies that are helping to better manage commercial energy consumption, right? And also, residential, right? So you get things like Hive, right? That are helping people manage their energy consumption inside their homes and things like that. So I think these are the very cool areas in technology that are going to be very interesting to see how they evolve and they even get better and smarter and help us reduce costs, both in the business world and the consumer world.
So you are into world sales and you know how the problems worldwide are solved using technology. So, and also you also saw the evolution of the technology, how humans solved different problems using technology. So today in present world, what is your take on humans problems and uh, the solutions for those problems using technology?
Yeah, I think that's how long do we got? How long do we got to solve that question? Yeah, I think there's it's a big world out there, right? And I've been in sales, for pretty much my whole career, right? And good salespeople are number one, good customer focused, right? Or customer obsessed, right? In helping their customers or their prospects along a journey of discovery, and and being very transparent and open with them, kind of every step of the way. And I think that is something that has been key in my career, interacting with companies, large and small, enterprises and small businesses, is that you're not always going to be the right fit, for your customer in terms of technology. But I think it's very key to build a strong relationship where you can have very transparent, open communications with customers who are evaluating your technology, going through a decision-making process, and you're there to help them, with that process. And I think one of the key ways you can do that is go deep on discovery of their actual problems. Sometimes customers are not very good at explaining what they're looking for, what their actual problem statement is. So you need to dig. You need to really go through a process with them to uncover what is the actual problem that they're looking to solve. And is your technology a good fit for that? And it may not be. And I think that's where a maturity in sales comes in, is that you're able to actually say, you know what, Mr. Customer, I'm not a good fit for you, based on, everything that you've described, everything that we've discovered together, we're actually not a good fit for you. But you know what? I know X, Y, and Z solution over here, that potentially could be a good fit for you, right? And then, a customer will sit back and take that kind of approach and just like, wow, that's a very high level of maturity when it comes to dealing with a solution sales process, and that not every sales process is going to result in a successful sale, right? And it shouldn't, because sometimes you're not a good fit for them. But being able to say that to a customer is really where it's at for me, and has served me really well.
And what is your style of solving any problem that you face or that you get?
It's really doing research. Research is kind of the foundation in terms of building up your knowledge of what it is you actually need and require, right? And I think sometimes it's overlooked and neglected of actually doing kind of deep discovery of the actual problem itself, to be able to come up with a good solution for it. And I think going through a real solid evaluation process. I think that is really the foundational key to understanding, I've got this problem. What are my potential solutions or answers to it? And it can, obviously it can be time consuming, right? but without kind of some fundamental research done at the beginning and a clear problem statement, and a clear idea of what success looks like in terms of how do we want to solve this challenge, how do we want to solve this problem. It's kind of hard to understand the answer to your problem.
And you have been in sales for a long time. So is there any particular way of doing technology sales?
Well, technology sales for me has always been extremely consultative. I think gone are the days of kind of hard, abrasive, selling, right? It's more about becoming an advisor, and depending on what your position is, and an evangelist, right? Evangelists of the kind of benefits of the technologies that you're selling. And, but doing that in such a way that you're more advising someone than selling, right? So we call it, you can call it solution selling, consultative selling. You can call it a number of things. But, you've got a technology or a product that does, X, Y, and Z. But really, the focus needs to be on use cases for your technology, explaining those really well, and then business outcomes. What business outcomes does your technology drive or is attached to? Because that's what, at the end of the day, what everybody's looking for. Everybody's looking for an outcome, right? You can buy a technology to do a thing, but what does that thing drive in terms of overall impact? What is the impact of this technology? If I were to buy a widget, let's just say I would buy a widget from you today, what is the impact of that widget on me as an individual? Maybe my team, but then overall my business. What is the outcomes? What is the results that technology drives? And these are the things that people look for and they buy into. And then there's the obvious one about return. Return on investment. What is the actual ROI of your product, your solution, your technology, and how long will it take for me to recoup my investment of time, and also money. Time, I need to learn your technology potentially, so there's a ramping time, but B, there's obviously potentially a monetary cost. So quantifying technology and solutions and helping customers to understand their return or potential return on investment is quite critical.
So you do sales worldwide. So do any human being from any part of the world have the same problem, and you are giving them solution?
Yeah, so I address kind of a worldwide audience right now, as we're a small team working at a startup. So in the early days of growth, you're very much on the worldwide stage, addressing an audience across the globe, and they're very different. There are some, depending on what your audience is, there are some commonalities, right? So for us, it's, developers worldwide that we want to engage with. But, in various different countries, there'll be different nuances in terms of, spoken languages, certain approaches to business, to technologies, different, how potentially different parts of the world adopt technologies and how quick they are to adopt them. Like, I personally live in the UK, but I'm originally from the US. So the US has always been touted as being kind of 5 years ahead in terms of their technology adoption and their willingness to adopt newer technologies more quickly than other regions. Now, it's not strictly true, because there'll be nuances in different areas of the world that will have accelerated adoption cycles of the latest and greatest technology. But the U.S. has always been touted as one of the most early adopters.
So do you find difficulty in selling the solution for countries that you have never been?
Not particularly. Because we're depending on what type of technology you're selling, if it's hardware, if it's software, if it's services, there can be, you're always going to encounter some resistance, right? You're new. If you're new, if you're just entering you're trying to enter into a region, a lot of times it's good to have local partners, in kind of local regions that speak the language, know the markets very, very well, that can help you enter into these kind of local regions, local countries. But in the early days, if you have interesting and innovative technology, once people understand it or find out about it, and especially if it's kind of if it's software which is easily accessible from anywhere in the world, right? People tend to be very curious and very interested in trying, at least testing the waters and trying it out. But yeah, depending on what technology you have, whether it's physical or whether it's kind of software, sometimes local partners in various different regions of the world can help you enter into those markets and give people the confidence that they need, that you can be trusted, so to speak, right?
And what is working for you to be a global communicator?
Well, I think one of the main channels I've been using lately is Twitter. Twitter is probably a very very interesting platform, and I know there's a lot going on in the world in terms of with Elon doing different things with Twitter, and lots of change going on there, and people jumping over to Mastodon, and I've been a hardcore LinkedIn user, for many years, right? So from a social point of view, I see LinkedIn and Twitter being kind of main platforms that kind of, for me as a professional and as a company, that are really good global channels to then start to put your content out there. Obviously, YouTube's a really good channel if you're a serious content creator, and there's a real good marketing channel. And then for depending on where your audience is, for me, our audience is on places like Hacker News and Reddit, those types of channels. So looking at product launches, software product launches at like Product Hunt, places like that, are good communication and marketing channels. Looking at things like streaming channels like Twitch, those are good platforms as well. I mean, Twitter has just added communities, to their platform, so they're trying to get into the community space. Slack is another good one. There's a lot of good Slack communities out there that you can get involved with depending on the subject matter of your technology that you're doing. So those are the kind of ones that I focus on, and kind of building advocates, building a following, and kind of speaking to the audience that we're after.
So how comfortable are you in adapting to the constant change in the 17 years?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed a good one there. The only constant in life we have is change, right? And I think everybody deals with change slightly differently, right? Um, some people are procrastinators when it comes to to certain areas of change, but others embrace it, and look to capitalize on it, utilize it, right? I think that's probably why I joined the technology industry in the first place, was because it is fast moving. It is always changing. And I find that interesting. I find that, that you can wake up tomorrow and, an open AI would have launched ChatGPT. Do you know what I mean? And you're just catapulted into this, new era of chatbots and, generative AI, and now, technology is going to change again, massively, because everybody's going to rush and look to utilize, these large language models. I find it exciting. I find it exciting and empowering, exhilarating, but not everybody will, right? I think, sometimes the common consumer, you know, can get tired sometimes of all the change. I just learned how to do this with my iPhone. And now Apple have changed it. They've moved everything around. I knew where everything was, and then now they've gone and changed it. All in the name of progress, improvement, right? So I get it. You can get fatigued sometimes by constant change, right? And yes, change does disrupt to a point, right? It does disrupt. But there's good disruption and there's bad, there's bad disruption, right? Or negative disruption. And I think, disruption, you can either fight it, or you can embrace it. And personal disruption, there's professional disruption. We've seen a lot of professional disruption with the large amount of layoffs, in the industry, with Google and Salesforce and these doing large layoffs. But I think overall, for me personally, it's a really good thing, and it keeps me engaged and excited to see what's coming next.
Why you are successful, and what tools you have used in order to be in the place where you are today?
Well, I think why is successful? I think there's some fundamental principles, and I'll just focus on one for this discussion. I think there's a lot of folks out there that approach their careers differently. Some people are just looking for a job, right? They're looking for an income, and that's fine, but they don't have very shall we say, high ambitions in terms of where they want to be in the next 12 months, the next 2 years, the next 10 years, right? So they're happy to just go through the kind of daily grind, put in their 40 hours, and get a paycheck. But I think for me, it all comes down to not just the desire to succeed, but the ability to execute as well. And one of the key things that I've done and focused on over the year is this concept of reinvention. We just talked about change, right? Change may come along and you may get made redundant, and it's time to look inward and to potentially go through a reinvention of yourself. to then take yourself to the next stage, to what's next. I love the stories of people getting, made redundant or getting fired, and the next thing you know, you're going off and creating a startup, and that becomes a unicorn, and is massively successful. And they said, being made redundant, was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was the juncture or the wake up call that they needed to go out and start something brand new, reinvent themselves. They never saw themselves as a CEO or a CTO or whatever, right? They never thought they had it in them to go and start something from the ground up. But given combination of events, they went and did it. But for me, it comes down to execution on your vision, for your life and your career, and building strong relationships along the way. There's a very cliche saying about your network is your net worth, so to speak. So I find people that, and for myself, that are strong networkers, right? They build a strong network around them that they can then tap into as the years go by, as they go along their journey in their career. Not every connection you're going to make is going to bear fruit in the next 6, 12, 24 months. You may have made a connection 5 years ago, that you then come into a space in your career, in your journey, that connection actually becomes valuable. So it's building a strong network, executing against your short-term and long-term goals, never getting too comfortable, because we've touched on it before, change is inevitable. Having the ability to reinvent yourself as and when you need to, personally and professionally, to really focus on where you want to be in 3 days from now, in 3 months from now, in 3 years from now, and having both short-term and long-term goals.
Awesome. And emotion and logic, which one worked for you for the 17 years?
Bit of both. If I always followed the logical path, then I don't think I would have had some of the amazing experiences that I have with people. Wouldn't have made some of the amazing connections I've had, again, with people. Companies, they're a construct, they're a framework for you to, reside underneath or reside in for a period of time, because it never will last forever, right? Your time at a company will never last forever. But people, transcend, they surpass your times at companies, right? At your tenures at companies. So creating long-lasting professional connections that will be with you for a lifetime. So yeah, there are definitely times where emotions have taken over, right? And you realize, looking in the rearview mirror, that maybe I could have made a better decision, or a less emotional decision. I could have made a more logical decision. But I think it's healthy to keep a balance of both, so that you are able to make, decisions with your heart as well as with your head.
You'll tell this same to the AI developers who are working on cloud industry or cloud technology?
Sorry, say it again?
The emotional logical thing that you said, will you give the same explanation for the AI developers or creators in order to make things happen in the cloud technology?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone has a different experience, right? Good, bad, otherwise, right? I think in the developer space, there's a lot of, there's a healthy amount of opinions in terms of how, people are, finding their way. They're doing things differently. They're discovering, what works for them, and one way will work, potentially one path will work for somebody, and it won't work for somebody else for various different reasons. And I think therein lies the opportunity, right? That technology adoption and working with technology is anything but a straight road in terms of it's not cookie cutter. Everyone is searching for the best way to work with technology, especially developers, to drive their outcomes, and give them what they need, give them the best experience. It's one of the biggest areas that I think the industry is focused on now, is how can we drive a better technology experience for developers. And that's the area that we're focused on. Because I think going back to our analogy about the 57 Chevy and the Ferrari, a lot of technologies and tooling has been built, for a certain type of user. When now, as times have evolved, right, and cloud is just mainstream, right, so if you think about, going back to just when we were all dealing with servers on the floor, in the data center or in the office, right? That was the servers guy's problem. There was some problem with the server or the infrastructure. That was the servers guy's problem. Me as a developer or a coder, I didn't worry about that, But now cloud has kind of changed everything in the sense that the infrastructure is so much more closer, to the applications that are being developed for it, that are going to run on it. So it's just inevitable that the developers are going to start to interact with the cloud infrastructure, and there's going to be a merging, right? We're still going to have infrastructure engineers, don't get me wrong, and we still do, and it's a huge ecosystem and a huge function, especially in large companies. But now we're seeing a kind of a coming together of infrastructure and application development like we've never seen before. So
I was asking you about you into worldwide sales. So what is the difference that you are observing that in the sales that you have done before long time ago in the smaller level, the sales, and comparing that sales with the worldwide sales?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've held kind of numerous sales roles that have focused on, much smaller geographical areas and verticals, as well, compared to now, which is, trying not to boil the ocean all at once. And yeah, it requires just a different, a shift in mindset, right? There's this old saying of think local, but act global. And I think it very much, comes down to, your approach as a salesperson, to your local market, to your in-country market, versus looking at your total addressable markets, across the globe. And there's lots of different ways to approach it. And in previous roles, you're very much active in local community, active in the local shall we say, organizations that can help you promote you as a local business. But now, in a very much a global situation or a global software company where your potential audience, your potential customers are everywhere in the world. So you have to think about, in my mind, I think of things in multiplication of effort. When you're small, when you're a small team or a small startup, you have to think about the kind of activities and relationships that you're looking to build and how they're going to multiply your effort. How are they going to give you, what kind of a return are they going to give you on your effort? Because there's only 8 hours in the day. Well, there's a lot more hours in the day, but, I wouldn't recommend, burning, the midnight, candle, so to speak, because you'll burn out, especially working in a startup, right? But, it's very important to, focus and prioritize, when you're a startup and when you're trying to address, a potential global customer base, right? And so you need to really look and evaluate, and qualify your activities and your engagements, in terms of how much they're going to be able to multiply, your effort and give you a good return. So a good example of that would be, affiliate and partnership programs. So investing in partners and advocates and affiliates, people that will, you know, multiply and replicate your effort, right? In terms of awareness, creating awareness of your company, awareness of what you do in their geographies, in their countries, in their companies, across the different globes. So setting up, programs like that will help you scale and will multiply your effort. So train the trainer, train the partner, train the advocate, in various different, geographic locations, so that you can give them the right incentives to talk about your product, your solution, in their respective geographies. So that's some area that, I focus on, as a small, in a small team, in a small startup, to kind of really multiply and scale your efforts.
And change is constant. You being as a leader, how do you handle and how do you make your team to adopt to new things that are constantly happening?
I think, you could spend a serious amount of time, worrying about, change, what's changing around you, changing market conditions, changing, competition, new emergence of new competitors, lots of different, changing, economic, changing, political, situations. I think you could spend a lot of time and a lot of mental cycles, worrying about, all these types of changes. And there's two trains of thoughts there, and the one extreme to the other, right? The one that's constantly reading the headlines, and then the other one that's kind of buried in the sand like the ostrich, right? I think there's a balance to be struck in being aware, being aware of new competitors emerging onto the scene, being aware of changing economic, climates. Because big companies and small companies, they need to look, evaluate these changes, and they need to understand how they affect them, and how they affect them potentially now, but most importantly, potentially, how, if they become a trend, how do they affect them, down the road, their future business. So I would strike a very much a balanced approach to the forces of change, right? To be very much aware of what's going on around you, but for it to not to consume you, so to speak, so that you can still focus on growing and building, but also having those very, very important conversations with your team around, do we need to pivot? Do we need to change our strategy in order to deal or to head off this trend? Because the worst case scenario is you get your head buried in the sand and new competition comes along. Economic downturns happen, and you're ignorant to the fact, and you kind of run into a perfect storm scenario, which no one potentially would be able to put that together in their mind, so to speak.
So, what is the connection between humans and technology?
Well, I think from the very beginning, humans were always seeking the ability to improve their lives. I think that's the fundamental here: improve their lives through the use of technology. And I think we've seen that. We definitely have seen that. But we've also seen, what I'm going to call the TikTok generation, right? We've also seen negative effects of technology and humans, right? To the point now where we have our devices tell us, how much we are using them, right? How much screen time, and now parents like myself need to keep an eye on how much their kids are consuming. These types of very addictive technologies, handheld technologies, right? So there are negative effects, right? There are very, very well-known negative effects of technology on humankind. Again, it's just, you can find pretty much any extreme that you want in the world, but it's all about, trying to create the right balance of technology and just humanity, being human, and trying to find that right balance.
So, as a global expert, as a person who is into technology from long time, being in different roles, doing different jobs, solving different problems, how this challenge human solved or can able to face? Because the challenges we humans are living in different parts of the world, which have different time zones. Uh, and we have established this technology with which we are able to exchange information using technological devices and technological mediums, with which we can able to share information at the same time when the information is being expressed. So how we are able to establish this communication system and information technology uh, and be connected, and how what all we did in order to make this happen, because you are into technology for a long time, you have saw the evolution of the technology. So how humans are thinking in order to make this different time zone people to be connected and interconnected with each other.
Yeah, I think the communication systems that we have in place are unprecedented, in terms of the availability of information at your fingertips, is instant, right? And it's just going to get even quicker with the advancements that we're seeing in generative AI. In terms of, we've been going to Dr. Google, right, for pretty much all of our wants and needs and questions in our quest for information. And now it's just going to get even easier. We can generative AI solutions are just going to be able to bring back more accurate, um, answers to our lifelong questions. But in terms of the connections between us as a human race, everything from video platforms to texting platforms, in the C2C, the consumer to consumer world, and then B2B, we've got, very intelligent, very advanced video conferencing platforms, that bring people together. We've got streaming platforms, we've got just about pretty much any kind of, digital medium, to bring people together that you could really ask for. And actually, one of the interesting areas that I'm working in is the whole concept of bridging the gap between um, physical and digital from a kind of a networking perspective. So it's kind of what you're talking about, bringing people together, allowing you to meet people, in different time zones and different global geographic locations, um, you know, without leaving the comfort of your home. So we all very familiar with big going to events and networking with industry people we know in the industry, people hopefully we don't know, which is obviously the true definition of networking, meeting new people, making new connections, which will hopefully open up new doors. But obviously COVID, brought in a completely new, paradigm shift to how, we're going to now interact with each other, and also communicate with each other. So I think there's an emerging space now, coming to where we are now starting having physical events again. You can fly, around the world and go to different global tech events, different industry events. But then a lot of people are still doing a lot of business over Zoom and over Skype. Um, but now I think there's a space opening up for how do we bring the two together, the networking that we enjoy in the physical world, but also the connections and the conversations we can have in the digital, i.e. in Zoom. So I think there's a space opening up for digital networking, where complete strangers can come and use AI or matchmaking technologies to get connected with each other on digital platforms where they can do digital networking. So someone in Mexico can network and meet someone in Hong Kong, and technology can be used to bring them together. I think it's a really exciting space.
And at last, one last question that is extremely valuable for everybody who is living in any part of the world, who is into any profession. This question's answer will definitely help them. So, what is business, and what values that should be there in business in order to make this human connections and humans' emotions balanced?
Well, I think in any business, you have to be extremely customer obsessed, in terms of the technology is there to be an enabler for the human experience, right? Technology it's not the end game, right? It's there to serve a purpose. And I think when companies get technology obsessed and they forget about the human experience, side, and they start building things, right? And they kind of do it, bit backwards, backwards to front. So they build great technology, but they don't build it with customers first. They don't build it kind of front to back. They kind of go back to front. So, I think some of the best. I think some of the best companies out there are kind of building customer first, human centric platforms that were built to enhance the overall human experience, regardless of what their purpose is, right? But they built a customer first, a human first experience, and the technology is kind of behind the scenes, enabling that experience. And you could apply that to just about any sector or any space that you're in. If you forget about or you neglect your actual customer, your actual person that you want to use your product or solution, you're gonna be in for a hard time, when you start to then, take your baby, out of the nursery, so to speak, and you start to show it to people, and and the feedback, comes back, and it's not nice, right? So my recommendation is, whatever you do in terms of your business and whatever technology you choose to build or use, you have to keep in mind, your users, your customers, and you need to be obsessed with that experience.
And at last, what is your observation about my work?
Yeah, I think people that are doing really really well in this day and age, I'll call it the TikTok age, are folks that are creating value and creating really good content, for folks to consume, that everyone can relate to, and get some actual nuggets of gold out of. So, I think building one's, personal brand, in 2023 is very important, right? Building one's network, of people that and you've connected with, and you've had real life, exchanges and conversations with, right? Because we've got a lot of keyboard warriors out there that love to hide behind the screens, and they're smart, intelligent individuals, and maybe their talent is not, conversing and speaking and engaging and whatnot. But at the end of the day, we need to find within ourselves the ability to build real life connections with people. And, I think that is something that you're doing really, really well.
Thank you. I did a master's in software engineering, also bachelor's in computer science and engineering. Right now, I'm doing DevOps engineering work. Apart from that, is my full-time job. Apart from that, I'm talking with experts like you who are already in the industry for a long time, doing different jobs and doing different roles, who are from different parts of the world, having completely different experiences. Uh, Also, non-technical people like doctors, authors, police officers, uh, uh, people from film industry I interviewed. So all this diversity, talking with different kind of people, different country people, how this knowledge is going to be helpful for me if I work in IT in coming days.
I think, a broad perspective and a very healthy, shall we say, mantra in terms of how you approach your work and expanding your knowledge. I think we might have frozen here.
Yeah.
Have we frozen?
Yeah,
Are we
now we
back?
are connected. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, it just went completely blank. No, I think this kind of broad exposure for you as a professional, as an individual, you're young, you're growing, you're expanding your knowledge, you're expanding your network, you're expanding your your mind's eye, so to speak, in terms of you're gathering lots of other perspective on the industry, on life, on other people's roles and whatnot. And I think that is going to be very valuable for you down the road, because so many people they get into a bubble, right? And I think everyone's got this problem to one degree or the other, that they're in a vacuum, or they're in a bubble, and they only associate or network with people that are like them. And so they don't have the widest and broadest of perspective or experience. So being naturally curious about, other people's jobs, their roles, what they're doing, and then, you work in technology, so understanding how they view technology as well, right? How they interact with technology, their frustrations, things they like, things they don't like. Do you know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, depending on what kind of technology you're using, these could be your users. These could be the people that use technology that maybe you create. So their perspective is extremely valuable. So I think getting out of your bubble is an amazing thing. Getting out of your local vacuum and socializing and connecting and networking and talking, having conversations on a global level in various different industries will add significant value to you as an individual, for sure. So yeah, I think what you're doing in your approach is really good.
It's extremely valuable for me, your observation. I'll keep this in my mind. I'll try to improve more and I'll skill up myself more. So can I put this video on my YouTube channel with your permission?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. My pleasure.
And also, can I put this audio and video clip on my podcast, website, internet, social media, everywhere with your permission?
Yep, no problem.
Yeah. Do you have your work to share with my podcast listeners so that they can follow you and they can see what you're doing and they can learn from you?
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. I'm pretty active there now. It's kind of Taylor_Deakyne. You can find me on Twitter. My Stacktape is also on Twitter as well. We're on LinkedIn. And we're also on Slack. We've got a Slack community channel, Discord channel. So anybody that's interested in, DevOps automation, for developers, specifically in AWS, I welcome them to come check us out.
So I'll put your links in the description of this video on YouTube. People who find our video on YouTube can see it. And also I'll put on the screen as well. The entire video, they can see your links and they can follow you and can learn from you.
Fantastic. Sounds great.
Thank you very much, Taylor, for your valuable time and spending your valuable experience with my audience and also answering my questions patiently.
No problems. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, sir, again.
Right. Take care.
Take care. Bye.